There are moments in war when time collapses into a single heartbeat, when all you can hear is your own breath, and the world narrows to the man next to you. That moment came for me on a ridge outside Kunar province, Afghanistan. The sun had barely risen. The valley was quiet in that eerie way that always comes before something terrible. I remember the dust on my boots, the weight of my gear, the hum of the radio. And then the sky cracked open. It started with one shot, then a dozen, then an entire wall of gunfire pouring from the tree line. We hit the dirt. My buddy Jake was 3 feet from me, yelling something I couldn't hear over the chaos. We'd been through 3 tours together. He was more than a friend. He was my brother. And then he wasn't yelling anymore. The round hit him center mass. I saw the impact, saw his body jerk. I remembered the sound he made, like all the air had been ripped from his chest. I crawled to him, dragging myself through mud and stone, bullets snapping overhead like angry wasps. He was bleeding fast, too fast. I did what I was trained to do. I applied pressure, checked his breathing, called it in. But I knew. You always know. His eyes were still open, locked on mine, like he was trying to say something without words. And in that second, I made a promise. I'm getting you out. I don't care what it takes. He couldn't walk. He couldn't even speak. But he was alive. Barely. And that was enough. The rest of the squad was pinned down, return fire screaming from behind me. But I wasn't thinking strategy anymore. I wasn't thinking at all. I hoisted Jake over my shoulder-dead weight, blood-soaked, gear still strapped to him, and started moving. The first steps were pure adrenaline. I didn't feel the weight, didn't feel my legs. I was running on something deeper than strength. I was running on loyalty, on the promise I'd made under fire, on every moment we'd ever shared laughing in the barracks, freezing in the mountains, cleaning rifles at 2 a.m. Jake wasn't just a soldier. He was a piece of my story. And I wasn't leaving him behind. What I didn't know then was that the next 6 miles would test every part of me, body, mind, soul. And that by the end of it, I'd never be the same man again. The first mile was just the beginning. What came next, would break something inside me. The jungle doesn't care who you are. It doesn't know rank. It doesn't honor courage. It swallows everything equally, the brave and the broken. As I moved forward with Jake over my shoulder, I could feel the terrain shift from rocky slopes to thick brush. My boots slipped more than they gripped. The heat wrapped around me like a furnace, and every step felt like dragging a boulder uphill in wet clothes. But I couldn't stop. Not for a second. I didn't know who was watching. Snipers, insurgents, maybe no one. But in combat, you never gamble with silence. You respect it. You keep moving through it. I kept my profile low, my pace steady. I whispered to Jake even though he couldn't respond. Told him stupid jokes. Recalled old stories from basic. Anything to pretend we weren't in the middle of nowhere with death behind every tree. Half a mile in, the first cramp hit. My right thigh locked up so hard, I nearly dropped him. I had to kneel, gasping, pulse thundering in my ears. Jake's head rested against my back, and I felt his breath shallow, but there. Still there. I took a swig from my canteen. Not much left. The medic pack was soaked with blood and rain. And the radio? Silent. I knew the extraction point was 6 miles southeast. That sounded manageable in theory. But with Jake's weight and hostile territory, it might as well have been 100. My mind kept racing ahead. What if I passed out? What if they found us? What if I failed him? But then I'd hear something. A bird call. A breeze moving branches. The creak of my own deer. And I'd snap back to one truth. I was the only chance Jake had. That knowledge wasn't pressure. It was purpose. We crossed a small creek. I slipped and fell to one knee, soaking us both again. Mud caked my hands. I pressed on. Another quarter-mile. Then another. I began to measure progress by trees. Just get past that trunk. Just to that rock. Every tiny goal was a victory. Around the 2-mile mark, I spotted movement up the ridge. My breath caught. I lowered us into a thicket, heart pounding. A shadow passed, then nothing. Could have been a bird. Could have been worse. But I didn't wait to find out. I adjusted Jake again. My back screamed, my arms trembled, but I stood. And walked Dot, because when a man you love is depending on you, pain becomes background noise. At mile 3, something happened that I still dream about to this day. And not because it was violent, but because it made me question whether I was strong. Enough to keep going. 3 miles in, the silence changed. It wasn't just quiet anymore. It was watching. I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. Every step forward felt heavier. Not because of Jake, but because of the doubt creeping in. The jungle was tightening. The brush got thicker. Vines clung to my gear, like fingers trying to pull us back. Every sound was amplified. A branch snapping sounded like a gunshot. My breathing like a beacon. That's when I heard the voice Dot. It wasn't real. I knew that. But exhaustion has a way of playing with your mind. It sounded like my father, calling my name. Clear as day. I froze. My heart stopped. For a second, I wasn't in Afghanistan. I was in the woods behind our house in Missouri, 8 years old, and lost after dark. That voice had saved me once. Now it was back. But I was too far gone to believe it. I shook my head, blinked hard, and pressed on. Jake shifted against me. His body was limp, but I thought I felt him stir. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe not. I whispered his name, told him we were close, even though I had no idea if that was true. Then came the clearing. Wide open space. 100 yards across. Exposed. No cover. I knew better than to risk it, but going around would burn another hour I didn't have. I crouched at the edge, scanning. Nothing moved. I adjusted Jake's weight, took a deep breath, and ran. Each step across that field felt like a lifetime. My boots sank into the earth. My arms screamed. My back felt like it would snap in two. I could hear my own pulse louder than any threat around me. Halfway through, I thought I saw a glint in the tree's metal. Glass? I didn't know. But I didn't stop. We made it to the other side. I collapsed behind a fallen log, chest heaving, vision swimming. I checked Jake. He was still with me. Barely. I pressed my forehead to his and just breathed. No words. Just survival. That clearing broke me a little. It reminded me how exposed we really were. How thin the line is between being alive and becoming a memory. What I saw in the next mile wasn't enemy fire. It was something worse, a reminder of what I stood to lose if I failed. Asterisk, the jungle had a way of whispering truths I wasn't ready to face. As we pushed forward, my body screaming with every step, I came face to face with a cruel reminder, something that made me stop cold. A worn-out photograph fluttered near a fallen tree, half buried in the mud. I reached down and picked it up, waterlogged and torn. It was a picture of Jake and his daughter, smiling in a sunlit park. That image hit me harder than any bullet. In that moment, the war wasn't about missions or orders. It was about the people we left behind, the families, the hopes, the futures. I traced the edges of the photo, imagining Jake's little girl waiting, praying, not knowing if her father was alive. My legs wanted to give up. My mind screamed to quit, but I couldn't. That photo became a symbol, a reason to carry on. Every mile was for Jake, and for the lives we'd promised to protect. Around us, The jungle seemed to close in, tighter. The heat was suffocating, the sweat blurring my vision. Yet I pushed forward, step by agonizing step. The weight on my shoulders wasn't just Jake's body anymore. It was the weight of loyalty, sacrifice, and brotherhood. With the halfway mark approaching, I faced the toughest choice, yet keep moving into the unknown, or risk everything to rest and lose the chance to save my brother. Every step forward felt heavier than the last. The sun was climbing high, burning through the dense jungle canopy and turning the air into a thick, suffocating furnace. Sweat poured down my face, mixing with the grime and mud that coated me from head to toe. Jake's weight on my back was relentless, an unyielding burden that pulled at every muscle in my body. My legs trembled, my breath came in jagged gasps, and the edges of my vision began to blur with fatigue. I reached a small clearing where the towering trees finally let the light in. The soft glow was almost peaceful, a cruel contrast to the chaos surrounding us. I carefully lowered Jake to the ground, my hands shaking uncontrollably as I tried to lay him down gently. His body was still warm, but the faint rise and fall of his chest was slowing. I wiped the sweat from my brow and closed his eyes, whispering a silent prayer to whatever was out there. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant calls of jungle birds and the pounding of my own heart. For a moment, I allowed myself to think about the lives waiting for us back home. Jake's daughter, probably wondering why her father wasn't there to tuck her in. My own family, praying I'd come back. But leaving him there, alone and vulnerable, was impossible. I gritted my teeth and promised myself I would carry him out, no matter what. I took the last sip of water from my canteen and checked my gear, my fingers fumbling from exhaustion. The radio was still dead. No rescue was coming. Looking toward the thick jungle ahead, I felt the weight of the unknown pressing in more miles. More danger, but also the faintest glimmer of hope. The bond between us, forged in blood and fire, was stronger than any fear. Every sacrifice, every aching muscle, every tear shed in silence, it was all for Jake, for brotherhood, for survival. I hoisted him back onto my shoulders and pushed off, knowing that the hardest part was yet to come. The final miles weren't just about survival. They were about what it truly means to carry someone through hell and back. Asterisk as I pressed deeper into the jungle, the weight of the world seemed to settle on my shoulders. Jake's body, my own failing strength, and the invisible dangers lurking just beyond sight. The air grew heavier, thick with humidity and the smell of wet earth. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves set my nerves on edge, reminding me that we were far from safe. I couldn't see the enemy, but I could feel them. The tension in the air was electric, a silent threat that kept me constantly alert. Every shadow seemed to move. Every breeze whispered warnings. My senses sharpened, instincts honed by years of training, kicking in even when my body begged for rest. My muscles screamed with fatigue, but I forced myself to focus on the small details, the position of the sun, the sound of distant water, the faint trail left by our squad. Each step was a calculated risk, a delicate dance between survival and danger. Carrying Jake was no longer just a physical burden. It was a test of my willpower. His face, pale and calm against my chest, fueled my determination. I whispered too, him telling stories of home, reminding him and myself that we were still fighting, still alive. Hours blurred into one another. Time lost meaning. The jungle swallowed us whole, but I refused to let it consume my spirit. When I finally saw the extraction point ahead, relief washed over me, but it was short-lived, because the real challenge was still waiting. Asterisk, asterisk. The extraction point was close now, a small clearing where helicopters could land and save us from this nightmare. I could almost hear the rotor blades in my mind, feel the rush of fresh air on my face, taste freedom. But getting there was a brutal test. One last hurdle that demanded everything I'd left. My muscles burned like fire. Every joint screamed in protest. My vision blurred at the edges, and my breath came in shallow gasps. But giving up wasn't an option. Jake's life, our brotherhood, depended on me. I forced myself forward, one agonizing step at a time. The jungle resisted with every thorn, every root threatening to trip me, every insect bite adding to the pain. Sweat and blood mixed on my skin. My hands were raw from gripping Jake's gear, my back a battlefield of its own. Memories flooded my mind. Laughter in the barracks, the first day of basic training, the promise we made to watch each other's backs no matter what. Those moments fueled me, reminding me why I couldn't stop now. Then, a sudden noise twigs snapping nearby. I froze, heart pounding. Was it friend or foe? I tightened my grip and scanned the dense trees. Nothing, just the jungle playing tricks on my weary mind. Finally, through the haze, I spotted the clearing. The sun pierced the canopy like a spotlight on salvation. Hope surged through me like a tidal wave. With one last burst of strength, I pushed forward, the finish line in sight. But the battle wasn't over. There was one final test waiting, one that would define us both forever. Asterisk, I hit the wall. Not the kind you can climb over, not something physical, but the one every soldier fears. The invisible wall where your body stops listening, your legs buckle, and your mind begins to whisper that it's over. I was there, kneeling in thick, jungle mud, breath shallow, ears ringing from the silence, too tired to move. I had no idea how long I'd been walking. Maybe 10 hours, maybe 30. Jake's weight hadn't changed, but mine had. I was less than I was when I started stripped down to raw instinct and grit. I dropped to one knee. My arms trembled, and Jake nearly slipped off my back. I caught him barely, but the jolt sent pain shooting up my spine. For a moment, I sat, there sweating, panting, broken, and thought, I can't do this anymore. That thought scared me more than anything I'd faced out there. Because once you start thinking that way, it takes root. It festers. Then I heard something soft, steady enough to be real. A stream, water. I hadn't realized how dry my throat was until that moment. I staggered toward the sound, Jake still on my back, the jungle echoing with each gasping. Step. We reached the edge of a shallow stream. The water was cold, clear, running over smooth stones. I lowered Jake beside it, hands shaking as I cupped water and brought it to his lips. He didn't wake up, but he moved just barely. A flicker in his fingers. It was enough. Enough to remind me why I couldn't stop. The jungle didn't care about my pain, my exhaustion, or my fear. But Jake did. And I had promised him more than just survival. I had promised him home. I sat there for a few minutes, listening to the water, letting it rinse the dirt and doubt off my hands. And then I stood up again. One step, another back into the jungle. But the wall wasn't gone. It just moved deeper into my bones. The next mile would be the hardest yet. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The jungle plays tricks on your mind. It doesn't shout, it whispers, softly, steadily, until you're not sure if what you're seeing is real. After the stream, after I pushed past that first wall of exhaustion, I thought I'd found my second. Wind, but it wasn't strength, it was something else. Something strange. Time lost its shape. The light shifted without warning. 1 minute, golden sun would filter through the canopy, and then, just as quickly, clouds would roll in, and everything turned gray. The line between memory and reality began to blur. I kept walking, step after step, Jake on my back, my boots sinking into the mud with every stride. And then I saw it off to the right, Maybe 30 meters away, a clearing. Not the LZ, not the one I was heading for, but a small flat patch of earth. In the center, impossibly clean, stood a table. Yes, a table. Wooden, covered in a white cloth, like a picnic in a park. My mother was sitting there. I swear, hair tied back, wearing the same blue blouse she always wore on Sundays. She was smiling. I stopped in my tracks, blinking, breathing hard. Was I hallucinating? Dehydrated? Dying? The jungle was silent, and for a moment, I wasn't in Afghanistan. I was home, 12 years old again, playing barefoot in the grass. I could smell the food: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, peach cobbler. My mother waved. I didn't walk toward it, but I wanted to. God, I wanted to. Jake stirred on my shoulders, and his moan snapped me back. The clearing was gone. The table, the cloth, the smell of home all vanished like breath on glass. I looked around, heart hammering. There was nothing but jungle, thick and endless. That was the jungle's greatest weapon, not bullets or snakes or heat, but memory, illusion, the kind of haunting that wears a man down from the inside. I whispered to Jake, told him I was still with him, that we were almost there, that I wasn't going crazy, but I wasn't sure anymore. I pushed forward, this time slower, more careful. My mind was a battlefield now, and the enemy wore the faces I loved the most. Reality bent, but it didn't break me. Not yet. But I knew the jungle would try again, and next time it might hit harder. Asterisk, asterisk, it was near dusk now. The air turned thick like soup, heavy with moisture and the scent of rotting foliage. The birds had gone quiet, which meant something was nearby. Maybe an animal, maybe worse. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I had been running on fumes for hours, and yet, somehow, my legs kept moving. My boots sloshed through mud, my grip on Jake's straps digging into raw red skin on my shoulders. The pain no longer felt separate. It was part of me now. A second pulse, in sync with my heart dot, and that's when the rain came. First, a drizzle, then a downpour, a curtain of water that erased everything. I couldn't see 10 feet ahead. The ground turned to slick clay. Every step became a gamble. One wrong move, and I'd be in a ravine. But I had one thing on my side: purpose. A vow made when everything was collapsing. I'm getting you out of here, Jake. I swear on everything I am. I spoke it aloud again, barely able to hear myself over the hammering rain. The jungle around. You is blurred into grays and greens. The light dimmed, and somewhere above, thunder rolled like distant artillery. I slipped, went down hard on my side. Jake's body twisted with me, and for a second, I thought I'd lost him. I scrambled in the mud like a madman, screaming his name, dragging him back to me, checking his chest, still rising, still breathing, barely. I collapsed beside him, rain pounding into my face. There was no cover, no shelter, just me, him, and the last flicker of will inside me. I wanted to scream, to cry, but the jungle doesn't care about your sorrow. So I lay there, whispering, "We're almost there. Just a little more. You're not dying in this place." And that was the vow that carried me into the final stretch. Not the promise to survive, but the promise to not let him die alone. If the jungle wanted to break me, it would have to do it while I was crawling forward with Jake on my back. Because I wasn't going to stop, not now. The jungle took everything, but it couldn't take that vow. And with the landing zone just beyond the ridge, I had one last mile to prove it. Asterisk, the clearing finally opened before me, bathed in harsh sunlight and filled with the distant hum of rotors. I stumbled forward, every muscle trembling but refusing. To give in, this was the end of the line. The moment I had fought for carried my brother to Dot as the helicopter landed and medics rushed forward. I gently laid Jake down, feeling a mix of relief and heartbreak. He was alive, barely, but breathing. The weight on my shoulders was finally lifted, but the emotional weight remained, heavy and raw. Dot in those moments, I realized that survival was more than physical strength. It was loyalty, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bond between soldiers. It was about carrying not just bodies, but hope, brotherhood, and courage through the darkest hours. Jake's story didn't end in that jungle. It became a testament to the power of friendship and the human spirit, and mine was forever changed. What can we learn from this? True loyalty means standing by those you love, even when the cost is great. Sacrifice isn't about glory. It's about doing what's right when no one is watching. Strength comes in many forms: physical, mental, and emotional. Never underestimate the power of hope and determination in the face of overwhelming odds. Brotherhood transcends fear, pain, and danger. It is the anchor in chaos. Sometimes, survival means carrying others, not just yourself. The hardest battles are fought inside the mind. Every step forward, no matter how difficult, is a victory. Courage is a choice, made again and again, even when everything seems lost. Thank you for listening. What would you carry through your hardest moments?